M2 links to P2 and P3. Good. And what was P2 and P3 talking about? Just to recap.
Example of leader and manager.
Yeah.
How they apply in different situations.
Different situations in relation to Tesco's. And P3, what was that talking about?
The model.
Okay, what models are we talking about? Situational, contingency, and systems. So, you know, you don't have to use all three again. So, systems, we used the systems model. We used Ken Blanchard's situational model. Yes, and contingency, we used Fiedler's contingency theory in P3. And in P3, you had to talk about all three of those, remember? Now, M2 says assess the strengths and weaknesses of different approaches to situations within the workplace. Now, take two of those approaches, not all three. Take two and say, what are the strengths and weaknesses of, say, Ken Blanchard's situational leadership style? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of Fiedler's model in relation to the examples you used in P2 or 3? So remember, you used specific examples in Tesco's, buying Booker's, yep, and buying Booker's, and then Booker's had Budgeons and Londis, yep. And remember, we also gave another example of delivering direct, and we all gave another example in terms of closing down warehouses. We gave another example in terms of the self-service tills. So in M2, take two of the theories and state the pros and cons in relation to specific situations that you already talked about in P2 or 3. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, just to recap, you know, we were looking at the situational model, Ken Blanchard's situational model, and the situational model was based on the level of commitment and the level of skill, which determined what type of leadership style you should have. And that determined if you should have directive, delegating, participative or supportive type leadership style. Yeah? If you remember the Fiedler's situational model, again, that was very dependent upon what? This was dependent upon the manager's relations with the employee.
Yes.
High or low. Do you see the differences between the different theories? Ken Blanchard's model is talking about level of commitment and level of experience. The Fiedler's model is talking about the level of commitment you have in terms of the manager and the employee. How much of a relationship you have between the two of you to help you motivate them to do what they need to do. Yep. Okay. And then the last one, the systems. Remember, the overall system was the overall strategy, and then the cognitive system method, and then the action strategies and processes. But just take two, don't take three. Okay? But remember, when you're doing M2, you need to relate it to specific situations in the workplace. Is that clear? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Okay, so assess the strengths and weaknesses of different approaches to situations within the workplace. You've already done situations in the workplace in P2 and P3, so you're just following on from that. You're stating the strengths and weaknesses of those models. How many words do I want?
250.
About 250. I want. Okay, well, let me just stop the recording there. Okay, so we're continuing on. Now we are focusing on M3. And M3 states evaluate, keyword, means look for the pros and cons. How leaders and managers can improve efficiencies of operational management to successfully meet business objectives. So we've already looked at the methods, and some of the methods included total quality management and also included continuous improvement. And when we looked at total quality management, we looked at various tools used in total quality management to meet the company's objectives or help the company be more efficient. We looked at generating ideas in terms of check sheets, scatter diagrams, and cause and effect diagrams. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
We looked at tools to organize data, flow charts, and tools for identifying problems. Tools for identifying problems included histograms and statistical processes. So we did all those in P what?
P4.
In P4. Okay. We also did in P4 continuous improvement, and there were 5 levels of continuous improvement. Remember, level 1 was to just go ahead and sort out problems. Level 2 was to organize people in groups to sort out problems. Level 3 was to look at the overall strategy and direct those teams to meet the objectives of the company. Level 4 was to do what? Empower people. And level 5, it becomes the norm. You're kind of like now becoming part of the culture, organizational culture. You don't mind mistakes. You don't mind investing in people to actually go ahead and look for the mistakes. You don't even mind change. You love change in the workplace to become more efficient and more effective. Okay? Part of the culture. And so when we're looking at evaluating these, you can now evaluate the pros and cons of continuous improvement. You can now evaluate by looking at the pros and cons of TQM. Do you understand? So what would be some of the pros and cons of TQM? What are some of the advantages of TQM?
You're more organized.
You get more organized. You've got more tools to identify problems, and if you can identify problems, you can sort them out. You've got tools for becoming more efficient, tools for becoming more effective. You've got tools for monitoring and controlling. If you know exactly what's happening where in your business, you know how to control it. But if you don't know what's happening, how do you know what you should do and direct people? If you're all working and I don't know what you're doing, then how can I manage you if I don't know what you're doing? If I don't know what you're doing, I don't know how fast you're working or what area you're working in, if you're doing well, if you're not doing well. But if I've got data using TQM, I can work out this person's has this productivity, this person has this productivity. Do you understand? I can work out now, or your productivity is lower than his. Well, why is your productivity lower than his? Do you understand? So these tools help you, but what's the downside of these tools?
Too strict.
It can be very strict, time consuming to implement, costly to implement, and do people want all this control? Want you to be monitored?
You can't be creative.
Yes, but do you like it? If you're not doing well, okay, if there's got 2 teachers, one teacher's failed all his students and another teacher's got a 90% pass rate, does a teacher who is not passed want that fact and figures to be pointed out? He doesn't. It makes him look bad. It makes him reflects badly on him.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing, isn't it? Because then what? Something's not going right, isn't it? If that teacher has got a low pass rate, something's not going right. He's not doing something right, and it's the responsibility of the teacher. Yeah? Okay, so again, you look at continuous improvement. What's the advantages of continuous improvement?
Improving. So it's just you get to see where your faults are and then you try to improve it.
Okay, but even not where your faults are, what can you do with CI? What can you do? Let's say you don't have a problem. Let's say you don't have a fault. What can you do? Develop what?
New ideas.
Yes, new idea. You can develop new systems, new approaches, new ways of doing things that save you time. So if you was travelling to college and it takes you an hour and a half, then you said, if I did this, travel this way, which will cost me the same, but I'll get to college in an hour. Do you understand? Have you looked at all the different ways you can get to college? Tell me all the different ways you can get to college.
So many.
Sorry, okay. How far do you live?
An hour and a half.
How many miles?
I don't know.
Who knows how many miles you live?
15 miles.
Okay, who lives about 10 miles away?
No one.
15 miles, okay. How long does it take you to get into college?
50 minutes by train.
50 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. How much does it cost you?
One way, both ways.
Both ways, of course. You need to get home.
Yeah.
You don't live in the college.
£8, yeah.
How much?
£8.
£8. How many days?
It's 2 days.
2 days. £8 for 2 days. Okay. So 8, 16, 24. So £32 a month.
Plus lunch.
That's a gym membership.
Yeah.
That's a gym membership. What could you do? How else could you get into college?
Walk.
No, take you too long. Bus, and would half your cost. Yep. Bicycle.
Yes.
Bicycle you could get in, and you fitter.
What about fat?
You get fitter. Didn't say you were fat.
Okay.
How else could you get in now? Be more creative now.
Uber.
It's too expensive.
Yeah.
How else could you get in?
Work.
Come on. Yes.
You can work. No, what?
How else could you get in? What about buying a scooter?
Yes.
You see these scooters? Electric scooters.
Yeah.
Electric scooters. It goes at 15 miles an hour. Some goes 20 miles an hour. And then scootering.
Yeah.
And then use the college electricity to charge it up. So what I'm trying to say is that with continuous improvement, you're always looking at new ways of doing things. What's the downside of this?
Sweating.
Time. Also, investment into people to look at all these issues. What else? What do people not like doing all the time?
Traveling.
Change. People don't like change. And to keep saying, okay, you're doing this, now we're going to change it, and next 6 months, sorry, we're going to change this now, and we're going to change it, it becomes a little bit annoying. But if it's part of the culture, then people don't mind, because now you're saying to yourself, you're meeting companies' objectives. You're saying you're saving on waste, you're saving on cost, you're saving on this. You're becoming the most efficient that you can. I kid you not, I am so far ahead in terms of what I'm doing, teaching and marketing and everything else. I am so far ahead of everything and everyone. I feel like I'm 6 months ahead. All by a process of continuous improvement and continually changing things. And that's a good thing, as long as you have that mentality and you don't mind having that mentality. Okay? Okay, so again, for M3, look at the pros and cons of TQM and the pros and cons of CI.
Yeah.
Okay? About how many words do I want for M3?
200.
Bingo, 250. This is not a bargaining chip. Okay. M4. M4 says to analyze keyword means to look at how one variable affects another, how these different factors affect the business environment and the wider community. So what are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? It links to P what? P6, but what are we talking about?
Operational management.
No.
Corporate responsibility. Social responsibilities.
Corporate social responsibility and ethical consideration. So, just to recap, we said that corporate social responsibility in terms of Tesco's was all about something that was socially accountable, where the company was socially accountable. And when we looked at ethical considerations, we were saying that there was morally correct and honourable. Morally correct and honourable. Okay? We could actually question that in terms of Tesco's accounting. In 2014 they mislaid 200 million. Of which I believe it's gone through the courts. There's no criminal action being taken, but I do believe that the company is going to be fined 100 million for that misaccounting. Okay? So when we're looking at this, we're talking about ethical considerations and corporate social responsibility. And you need to analyse how these different factors affect the business environment and wider community. So, how does it affect the wider community and the business environment? You need to say, how does it affect them? It affects them by reducing pollution levels in terms of CO2 emissions, in terms of carbon emissions. It affects the wider community in terms of Tesco specifically.